This is the unknown zone, where history hides its most important victories, in silence, in shadows, and in secrets. Today, we enter a quiet English estate that once appeared ordinary, peaceful, and calm. A place with gardens, trees, a small lake, and nothing that revealed the truth inside its walls. Yet behind those doors, a hidden war was being fought. A war without uniformed soldiers. A war where the most powerful weapon was not a gun, but intelligence. A war where the difference between victory and defeat came down to a single intercepted message. This is the story of Bletchley Park, the center of British code-breaking during the Second World War. A place where brilliant minds worked in secret to break the German Enigma machine, and in doing so, changed the course of the war. Before the Second World War began, Europe was tense. Germany was expanding. Hitler was rearming at a terrifying pace, and every intelligence agency in Europe understood that conflict was coming. But what many did not fully grasp was that Germany had developed a communication system so complex and so secure that it appeared unbreakable. At the heart of that system was the Enigma machine. The Enigma machine was a compact device that looked like a typewriter with extra electrical components. To the Germans, it was a masterpiece. Every key press passed through a series of rotating wheels, each changing the electrical path and producing a different coded output every time. The number of possible settings was astronomical. It seemed impossible for anyone to reverse engineer a German message. And for a time, it was. But Britain understood that if Enigma could be broken, it could reveal troop movements, supply convoys, battle plans, and even the intentions of Hitler's high command. The key to understanding the enemy lay inside the machine. In 1938, the British government quietly purchased Bletchley Park, a Victorian estate surrounded by 58 acres of land. The location was strategic. It sat near the main railway lines. It was far enough from London to be protected from heavy bombing. But most importantly, it looked ordinary and unremarkable, perfect for secret work. The government began assembling a team unlike any other in military history. They did not recruit soldiers or generals. Instead, they searched for people with unusual minds: mathematicians, linguists, scientists, classicists, chess champions, crossword experts, young women with exceptional intelligence, introverts whose brilliance was overlooked by society, people capable of seeing patterns where others saw nothing. These recruits arrived at Bletchley Park with almost no idea of what they were being hired to do. They were told that their work would be vital. They were told that secrecy was absolute. They signed documents binding them to silence, not only during the war, but long after. Alan Turing arrived in 1939. He was 27 years old, soft-spoken, and eccentric by nature. His brilliance was unmatched. Turing understood something crucial. Enigma could not be broken by hand. Even with thousands of workers, even with every mathematician in Britain, the calculations required would take longer than the war itself. A machine was needed, a machine that could test combinations at speeds no human could match. This realization led to the development of the Bombe, a large electromechanical device designed to narrow down the possible Enigma settings each day. Turing's ideas, combined with the engineering expertise of others at Bletchley Park, began the long battle to break German-coded communications. Bletchley Park was organized into small buildings called huts. Each hut had a specific purpose. One hut worked on German army codes, another focused on the Luftwaffe, another on the German Navy. Others processed the intelligence into usable reports for military leadership. Inside these huts, the work never stopped. People labored in cold, damp rooms through endless shifts. Messages intercepted overnight had to be solved before the next midnight, when the Germans reset their Enigma machines. Every passing hour mattered. Every delay meant lost lives. Most of the world does not know that Bletchley Park received crucial assistance from Poland. Before the war, Polish mathematicians had begun breaking early versions of Enigma. They managed to determine rotor patterns and built some of the first replica Enigma machines. When Germany invaded Poland, these mathematicians smuggled their discoveries to Britain and France. Their work became the foundation for everything Bletchley Park would later accomplish. It was an act of brilliance and sacrifice that changed intelligence history. Despite this head start, the challenge was immense. German Enigma operators changed the machine's settings daily at midnight. Every codebreaker at Bletchley woke early, arrived at their station, and began working from scratch. Thousands of encrypted messages poured in every day. Each one was a potential clue. Each one could save lives, but only if solved quickly. Breaking the German Army and Air Force Enigma was difficult. Breaking the German naval Enigma would become nearly impossible. The U-boats that hunted Allied convoys were coordinated entirely through encrypted communications. If their messages could not be read, entire fleets could vanish beneath the Atlantic. The pressure was overwhelming. The stakes grew higher with every ship sunk and every convoy lost. Bletchley Park was about to enter the most dangerous phase of the intelligence war. As the war intensified across Europe, a growing sense of urgency settled over Bletchley Park. Every intercepted German message represented a piece of the war's puzzle. Every unsolved code was an unknown threat. The most dangerous intelligence came from the Atlantic, where German U-boats were sinking Allied ships at an alarming rate. These submarines moved silently across the ocean, coordinated entirely through encrypted radio transmissions, and their code was controlled by a more advanced version of the Enigma machine. The German Navy believed their version of Enigma was unbreakable. They used extra rotors, stricter procedures, and more complex key settings. Britain's survival depended on breaking this code. Without it, merchant ships carrying food, weapons, and supplies could not be protected. A nation that relied heavily on imports was suddenly facing starvation and economic collapse. The Battle of the Atlantic became one of the most crucial struggles of the war. Inside Bletchley Park, Hut 8 was assigned the near-impossible mission of solving naval enigma. Alan Turing played a central role, but he was joined by several other brilliant minds, including Gordon Welchman, Hugh Alexander, and many young women whose contributions remained unrecognized for decades. They worked in silence, surrounded by mountains of intercepted messages, each printed on thin sheets of paper. Some contained repeated phrases or predictable patterns. Others offered no clues at all, but every message mattered. Breaking naval enigma required more than mathematics. It required luck, clever deduction, human error from the enemy, and a deep understanding of how German operators thought. Any small mistake a German made using the same opening phrase, repeating a weather report, sending the same message twice, could give Bletchley a small opening. and that opening could lead to breakthroughs. It became a daily race. Every midnight, the Germans changed their Enigma settings. This meant that any progress made in the previous 24 hours evaporated instantly. The codebreakers had to start again. Each day was different. Some days revealed quick breakthroughs. Others led to dead ends. But they kept pushing forward, driven by the knowledge that failure meant ships sinking and lives lost. Over time, Turing and his team refined the Bombe machines. Early versions were slow, noisy, and incredibly large, taking up entire rooms. But with engineering improvements, they became faster and more efficient, drastically reducing the time needed to find Enigma's daily settings. Still, even with these machines, the workload was enormous. The noise within the Bombe buildings was overwhelming, filled with constant mechanical pounding. Women who operated the machines endured long shifts, often 12 hours at a time, in conditions that were cold during winter and unbearably hot during summer. Every success brought relief. Every day without progress brought despair. But the breakthrough that changed everything came unexpectedly. The German Navy occasionally used weather ships, surface vessels, positioned at remote points in the Atlantic. These ships sent weather reports back to Germany using Enigma. Unlike U-boat captains, who were highly trained in secure communication, weather ship operators sometimes made mistakes. They repeated phrases, reused keys, or transmitted predictable content. When the British captured some of these ships, they found Enigma codebooks, rotor settings, and other crucial material. This captured information did not solve the code permanently, but it gave Bletchley the crucial momentum needed to begin understanding how naval Enigma operated. Once the Bombe machines were set up with correct assumptions, they began breaking naval messages more frequently. Suddenly, Allied commanders could see the positions of U-boats. They could reroute convoys. They could avoid deadly traps. The Battle of the Atlantic began to shift, but the Germans soon realized something was wrong. They upgraded their Enigma again, adding an extra rotor and more daily key changes. Naval Enigma became even harder to break. Bletchley Park was thrown back into crisis. Turing and his team had to adapt yet again. They developed new machines, faster techniques, and more structured ways of analyzing intercepted messages. The burden grew heavier, but so did the determination. Britain could not afford to lose the Atlantic supply lines. During this time, Bletchley Park expanded dramatically. More huts were built. Large wooden blocks known as Blocks A, B, C, and D were constructed for intelligence processing. Thousands of new workers arrived, many of them young women in their late teens or early 20s. Their roles varied. Some operated teleprinters. Others organized and cross-checked intercepted messages. Some worked in the Bombe rooms. Others translated German once the messages were decrypted. Most of them had no idea what the larger picture looked like. They were instructed to focus only on their assigned task. No one was allowed to ask questions. No one was allowed to discuss their work with anyone outside their hut. Even years later, many of these workers kept their silence, believing they were still bound by their wartime oath. Meanwhile, German U-boats continued to hunt Allied convoys relentlessly. In 1940 and 1941, the situation was critical. Ships were being sunk faster than they could be replaced. Churchill later said that the U-boat threat was the only thing that truly frightened him. He knew that if Britain lost the Atlantic, it would lose the war. Inside Bletchley Park, exhaustion was constant. People worked through nights. Some slept on floors or in chairs, waiting for the next batch of intercepted messages. There was little comfort, little warmth, and no recognition. Most of them believed that the public would never know what they did. Yet in the midst of the strain, there were moments of breakthrough. Sometimes a single decoded message contained vital intelligence. Sometimes it revealed a U-boat rendezvous point or a planned attack route. These messages were immediately sent to Allied naval commanders, who used them to avoid danger or set up counterattacks. Every one of these successes meant saved lives. The codebreakers did not see the battles. They did not witness the Atlantic storms or the sinking ships. But their work guided the convoys through dangerous waters. Their silent contributions altered the entire trajectory of the war. As 1942 approached, a new problem arose. The Germans began using Enigma to coordinate operations in North Africa. Rommel, the Desert Fox, relied on fast-moving maneuvers and precise supply lines. Reading his communications could help the Allies predict his moves. Losing access to them could be catastrophic. The pressure on Bletchley Park continued to rise. More huts were built. More Bombe machines were installed. More intercept stations across Britain and overseas fed messages into the system. Bletchley became a vast intelligence ecosystem, all operating in silence, all dedicated to breaking enemy codes. By this time, the codebreakers had grown used to living double lives. During their breaks, they played chess, walked the grounds, or sat quietly in the gardens. But the moment a new stream of messages arrived, the peace vanished, and the race against time resumed. What they did not yet know was that a far greater challenge was on the horizon, a challenge that would reshape the entire nature of wartime intelligence. The German High Command was beginning to use a new cipher machine, a machine that would threaten to undo everything Bletchley Park had accomplished. And the world's first true computer would be born in response. By late 1942, the war in Europe had grown larger, faster, and far more complex. German communication networks expanded, and with them came new systems of encryption. Enigma remained the backbone of daily military traffic. But high-level strategic messages began passing through a far more sophisticated and dangerous machine. This new cipher system was not used by ordinary units. It was reserved for the highest levels of the German High Command. These were the messages that carried the thoughts of generals, the intentions of field marshals, and sometimes the directives of Hitler himself. The machine that encrypted those messages was known as the Lorenz cipher. For the codebreakers at Bletchley Park, Lorenz posed a challenge far greater than Enigma. It did not use rotating mechanical wheels in the same way. It used an advanced system of electric circuits that changed the message through a far more complex pattern. The number of possible settings was so vast that no human effort could tackle it. Even the bombs designed for Enigma were useless against Lorenz. It was a new kind of enemy, a mathematical fortress that required a different approach. At first, very little was known about Lorenz. The machine itself had never been seen by Allied intelligence. Only the encrypted messages, sent by radio, were intercepted. The codebreakers studied the traffic patiently. They compared letter patterns, searched for mistakes, and waited for an opening. That opening arrived in August 1941, months before Lorenz was widely used. A German operator sent the same long message twice, using the same settings, something he was strictly forbidden to do. His error gave the codebreakers a rare opportunity. By analyzing the two transmissions side by side, a brilliant mathematician named Bill Tutte began to understand the structure hidden within Lorenz. Tutte had no machine to examine, no diagrams, no technical manuals. He only had columns of encrypted text. Yet, through reasoning, deduction, and patient calculation, he identified the number of wheels inside Lorenz, the length of the patterns they produced, and the logical structure of the machine. It was one of the greatest mental achievements in the history of cryptography. Tutte essentially discovered the internal mechanics of a machine without ever seeing it. But understanding Lorenz was only the first step. The sheer volume of calculations needed to determine its settings was beyond anything Bletchley Park had the capacity to handle. The old methods were too slow. The bombes could not help. Pencil and paper were useless. Even electromechanical devices were limited. The challenge required something entirely new, something faster than anything created before, something that could handle thousands of calculations in seconds. Bletchley Park needed a machine that did not yet exist. This necessity sparked a historic invention. Engineers and mathematicians began designing an electronic machine capable of performing complex, logical operations at extraordinary speed. The result was a device that would become known as Colossus. It was the world's first programmable electronic computer. Colossus used thousands of vacuum tubes, circuits, and electrical pathways to process messages at unprecedented speed. It compared patterns, tested hypotheses, and eliminated impossibilities in ways no human could. It did not think in the modern sense, but it operated with a precision and speed that changed the future of intelligence work forever. For the first time in history, humans had created a machine that could assist in breaking a code too complex for any brain to solve alone. As more Lorenz messages were intercepted, Colossus became essential. The machine analyzed the traffic, testing millions of combinations. The results were passed to human codebreakers, who then reconstructed German high command directives. Suddenly, Bletchley Park had access to the thoughts and strategies of the enemy's leadership. They could see supply routes, troop movements, and orders for entire divisions. It was like looking inside the mind of the German war machine. But operating Colossus required absolute secrecy. Its existence was known only to a handful of people. Even within Bletchley, most had no idea that the machine existed. Those who worked on it were sworn to silence so strict that they could not even speak of it decades after the war. Many died without ever knowing that their invention was recognized as the first step into the computer age. While Lorenz messages revealed strategic decisions, Enigma still revealed the daily movements of ships, aircraft, and ground forces. The combination gave the Allies a priceless advantage. Commanders could see both immediate tactical plans and long-term German intentions. This allowed them to prepare for upcoming offensives, reinforce vulnerable areas, and mislead the enemy at critical moments. As 1943 began, Bletchley Park was operating at its peak. Thousands of people worked around the clock. Intercept stations across Britain, the Mediterranean, Africa, and the Middle East fed messages into the system. Teleprinters carried decoded fragments to intelligence officers in other buildings. Analysts assembled reports, compared patterns, and identified emerging threats. Every hut played its part. Every worker contributed to the slow dismantling of German secrecy. Despite the scale of the operation, life at Bletchley remained austere. The buildings were cold during winter and stifling in summer. Many workers lived in cramped accommodations nearby. Social lives were limited. Friendships and relationships developed, but always under constraints of secrecy. No one could speak of their work. People worked long hours, often without knowing whether their efforts had led to success. Only the highest-ranking officers understood the full picture. Yet morale remained surprisingly strong. Many workers understood the importance of their mission, even if they did not see the results directly. They knew that breaking codes saved lives. They heard rumors of convoys saved from U-boat attacks. They heard whisperings of battles influenced by intelligence. Even without full details, the sense of purpose was powerful. As the Allies prepared for a major offensive in North Africa, Bletchley Park played a crucial role. Intercepted messages revealed supply shortages within Rommel's forces and exposed weaknesses in German logistics. These insights allowed Allied forces to anticipate German moves and exploit their vulnerabilities. As a result, the tide in North Africa began to turn. Victory at El Alamein was shaped in part by the intelligence coming from Bletchley Park. But the greatest challenge still lay ahead. Plans were forming for a massive invasion of occupied Europe, an operation that would require secrecy, deception, and perfect timing. An operation that would rely heavily on intelligence from broken German codes. The success of the largest amphibious invasion in history would depend on what was happening inside Bletchley Park. Colossus continued to evolve. New versions were built with improved speed and accuracy. They processed more messages, refined more patterns, and delivered intelligence with increasing reliability. The war was shifting in the Allies' favor, but the risks remained immense. German U-boats still roamed the Atlantic. Field armies still fought across multiple continents. The enemy was adapting, improving, and growing more cautious with each passing month. Inside Bletchley Park, the workers pressed on. More messages were intercepted every day. More codebooks were captured on land and at sea. Every breakthrough meant another opportunity to weaken the German command structure. Every message read was a small victory in a war fought through quiet rooms filled with paper, machines, and minds working tirelessly. By the end of 1943, Bletchley Park held an extraordinary position. It had become one of the most important centers of intelligence in the world. Its outputs influenced naval battles, air operations, desert campaigns, and the movements of armies across Europe. Yet the people who worked there remained invisible to the world. Their achievements were hidden behind locked doors and coded signatures. They carried on without medals, without recognition, and without knowing when the war would end. But soon, Bletchley Park would support the most important operation of the entire war. An operation whose success depended on secrecy, timing, and perfect intelligence. The invasion of Normandy was approaching, and the codebreakers were about to take on their greatest responsibility. By early 1944, the war had reached a critical point. The Allies were preparing for an invasion that would determine the fate of Europe. The plan required secrecy on a scale never seen before. Every movement, every supply ship, every unit shifted toward the southern coast of England had to be concealed from German intelligence. If the Germans discovered where and when the invasion would take place, the entire operation could collapse. Thousands of lives depended on keeping the enemy blind. Inside Bletchley Park, the pressure intensified. The codebreakers were now reading both Enigma and Lorenz traffic with increasing speed. Messages from the German High Command revealed troop movements, defensive preparations, and expectations of Allied strategy. Each decrypted message offered a small window into the German mindset. Together, they formed a map of what the enemy believed was coming. The more Bletchley learned, the more the Allied planners adjusted their strategy. One of the most important discoveries was the scale of German defenses. Hitler had fortified the coast of France with a long chain of bunkers, artillery positions, minefields, anti-tank obstacles, and machine gun nests. This defensive system was known as the Atlantic Wall. German commanders feared an invasion, but disagreed on where it would happen. Some believed it would strike the Pas de Calais, the narrowest point between France and Britain. Others suspected Normandy. But the final decision, the one that mattered most, rested with Hitler. Bletchley Park needed to know what he believed. If Hitler committed his forces to the wrong location, the Allies would have a chance. If he guessed correctly, the invasion could fail before it even began. Decrypted Lorenz messages revealed an important fact. The German High Command was convinced that the main Allied invasion would come at the Pas de Calais. This belief became the foundation for Operation Fortitude, one of the most ambitious deception operations in history. The Allies created an entire phantom army, complete with fake radio traffic, inflatable tanks, wooden aircraft, and false troop movements. The goal was to reinforce Hitler's belief that the invasion would strike the Pas de Calais. And the only way to know if the deception worked was to read the messages coming out of Germany. This was where Bletchley Park became indispensable. As the deception unfolded, German messages showed no hint of doubt. Their commanders studied the false radio communications with complete confidence. They believed that a massive army under General George Patton was preparing to cross the Channel. They strengthened their defenses in Calais and held back key divisions, waiting for an invasion that would never come. Every time a message confirmed their belief, Bletchley Park passed it to Allied planners. The invasion strategy evolved around this intelligence. Decisions were made day by day based on the enemy's understanding of events. The codebreakers were shaping the battlefield before a single soldier landed on French soil. As the date of the invasion approached, tension inside Bletchley Park grew. The number of intercepted messages multiplied. The rooms filled with the sound of teleprinters delivering decoded fragments. Analysts worked tirelessly, checking and cross-checking information. Every detail mattered. The weather forecast, German troop movements, coastal defenses, and supply routes were all being monitored in real time. Colossus played a central role. The machine processed Lorenz messages faster than any human team could. Analysts watched as it produced possible wheel patterns, refined settings, and narrowed down the cipher parameters. The speed of intelligence became a weapon. It allowed commanders to respond almost immediately to changes in German strategy. In the final days before the invasion, Bletchley Park received a stream of critical messages. They revealed that German units in Normandy were not at full strength. Many divisions remained in Calais, waiting for the Phantom Army. Other units in France were spread thin, repositioning based on false information. The deception was working. The invasion had a chance. When the 6th of June 1944 arrived, Bletchley Park followed the events quietly from the shadows. The codebreakers went to their huts, sat at their desks, and continued their work, just as they had every day of the war. They did not witness the beaches of Normandy. They did not see the landing craft or the gunfire. Their battle continued inside the walls of Bletchley. Every intercepted message mattered. Every clue could help the soldiers fighting on the beaches. As German commanders reacted to the invasion, their messages revealed confusion and hesitation. Many believed the Normandy landings were a diversion. They still expected the main assault to hit the Pas de Calais. This belief caused them to delay sending reinforcements to Normandy. Those delays saved countless Allied lives, and each delay was confirmed by Bletchley Park through decrypted communications. In the weeks following the landings, the battle for France intensified. German divisions fought fiercely, but their movements were constantly tracked through intercepted messages. Bletchley Park could see their supply shortages, their retreat paths, and their orders. This intelligence allowed Allied commanders to anticipate German counterattacks and disrupt their strategic planning. As the Allies pushed through France and liberated key cities, Bletchley Park remained fully operational. The work increased. German messages continued to flow. Many units shifted to desperate communications, and mistakes rose. These errors gave the codebreakers more openings. They pieced together enemy positions, identified logistical problems, and revealed where German forces were collapsing. The significance of Bletchley Park during this time cannot be overstated. Its intelligence guided airstrikes, protected convoys, and shaped battlefield decisions. The codebreakers were an invisible army that never held a weapon but changed the outcome of battles across Europe. And yet, despite the tremendous impact of their work, they received no recognition. Their contributions remained locked behind secrecy. By late 1944, the German military was in full retreat across multiple fronts. But as their defeats increased, so did their efforts to protect their communications. Encryption procedures grew stricter. Message volumes increased. Bletchley Park adjusted once again. They analyzed new methods, captured codebooks, and strengthened their machinery. The race continued even as the war's end became visible. Inside the huts, exhaustion deepened. Many workers had been on duty for years without a break. They missed holidays, family events, and any life beyond their work. Yet the sense of responsibility kept them moving. They understood that the war was not over until the final German transmission fell silent. The end was approaching, but the final months would demand even more from Bletchley Park. The Germans were falling back, but they were also communicating at a frantic pace. Their high command relied heavily on encrypted transmissions. Those messages would reveal everything about the closing chapter of the war. It was during this period that Bletchley Park faced the last major wave of intercepted intelligence that would influence the final Allied advances across Europe. As the winter of 1000 944 approached. The German command structure grew increasingly unstable. The retreat across France and Belgium forced rapid communication between commanders, and the volume of encrypted messages surged. For Bletchley Park, this meant an opportunity. The more the Germans spoke, the more mistakes they made, and the more intelligence could be extracted. Intercept stations scanned the airwaves day and night, feeding Bletchley a stream of traffic that expanded with every German withdrawal. One of the most significant moments arrived with the German offensive in December 1944, known as the Battle of the Bulge. The attack caught the Allies by surprise. Dense forests, heavy snow, and sudden German advances caused confusion across the front. It became one of the deadliest battles for American forces during the entire war. During this critical period, Bletchley Park worked at maximum capacity. Messages from German units revealed their supply shortages, their armored movements, and their troop deployments. Analysts pieced together information that helped Allied commanders understand the scale and direction of the attack. Although Bletchley could not foresee every German action, its ability to decipher high-level communications played an essential role in containing the offensive. As the Germans began to lose momentum, intercepted messages exposed their dwindling fuel reserves and their inability to reinforce key positions. This intelligence guided Allied decisions, helping them predict where German forces would falter. The offensive eventually collapsed, leaving Germany with heavy losses that it could not replace. By early 1945, the collapse of German forces accelerated. Intercepted communications revealed desperation inside the German High Command. Messages became shorter, more chaotic, and more fragmented. Many units radioed for supplies that no longer existed. Others sent reports of ammunition shortages, fuel scarcity, and failing morale. The pattern was unmistakable. The German war machine was breaking down, but Bletchley Park did not relax. Even with victory in sight, the pressure remained relentless. Every message still had to be solved. Every breakthrough still mattered. Lives were still at stake until the very end. Codebreakers continued their shifts, often unaware of how close the war was to ending. Their world remained confined to paper strips, cipher patterns, and the constant hum of machinery. As Allied forces crossed the Rhine and advanced deeper into Germany, Bletchley Park gained access to more captured materials. Codebooks, Enigma rotors, instruction sheets, and communication logs were discovered in abandoned bases and on captured ships. Each piece of equipment was sent back to Bletchley, further accelerating the decryption process. The final months of the war saw some of the most rapid intelligence analysis ever performed at the site. By April 1945, German communications were in chaos. Units fought isolated battles, often cut off from leadership. Messages intercepted during this period painted a clear picture of collapse. Entire divisions surrendered, others dissolved. The structure that once seemed invincible had deteriorated beyond repair. Bletchley Park followed this unraveling day by day, message by message, until the final transmissions faded. When the war in Europe ended on the 8th of May 1945, Bletchley Park received no public recognition. The workers who had labored for years in secrecy were not celebrated. They returned home quietly, forbidden to discuss their work. Many kept the secret for decades. Families remained unaware of the role their loved ones had played. Friendships formed inside Bletchley dissolved into silence. The oath of secrecy was so deeply ingrained that even when the information was later declassified, many hesitated to speak. Yet, the impact of Bletchley Park was extraordinary. Historians estimate that the intelligence produced there shortened the war by at least 2 years. Millions of lives that might have been lost were saved. Entire battles were influenced by decrypted messages. Convoys survived because of warnings. Units were protected because of information passed to commanders. The bombing of London could have been far worse without the intelligence that guided early radar and air defense operations. The invasion of Normandy succeeded, in part, because Bletchley Park confirmed the success of deception operations and tracked German reactions in real time. Beyond its impact on the war, Bletchley Park created something that would shape the modern world. The Colossus machine, designed to break the Lorenz cipher, became the foundation for modern computing. Although it was destroyed after the war to maintain secrecy, the ideas behind it lived on. The concept of using electronic circuits to perform rapid calculations later inspired post-war computer development. The codebreakers unknowingly laid the groundwork for the digital age. Alan Turing, whose work was central to breaking Enigma, did not receive recognition during his lifetime. The secrecy surrounding Bletchley prevented the world from knowing his achievements. After the war, he continued his research in mathematics and computing, writing visionary papers that contributed to the development of artificial intelligence. But his life ended tragically, long before his contributions were fully understood. Only decades later would his role be acknowledged as one of the most important scientific accomplishments of the 20th century. The thousands of women who worked at Bletchley Park also remained unrecognized for decades. They operated the bombes, sorted messages, performed complex analyses, and served in roles that required discipline, intelligence, and resilience. Without their efforts, the operation would have collapsed. They formed the backbone of Bletchley Park, working long shifts under enormous pressure. Their silence after the war was one of the greatest untold acts of loyalty in British history. When Bletchley Park was finally declassified in the 1,970 seconds, the full truth of its achievements began to emerge. Former workers came forward reluctantly, unsure if they were truly allowed to speak. Some were surprised to learn that their colleagues had held key roles. Many families were stunned to discover that a parent or grandparent had helped break the most complex cryptographic systems ever created. Books were written. Documentaries were produced. The world finally began to understand the significance of the quiet estate in Buckinghamshire. Today, Bletchley Park stands not only as a museum, but as a symbol of human intellect under pressure. It represents a battle fought with logic rather than weapons, with reasoning rather than force. It shows that wars are not won only on the battlefield, but also in rooms filled with paper, machines, and people who think differently. The legacy of Bletchley Park extends far beyond the Second World War. Its influence can be seen in modern computing, cybersecurity, intelligence analysis, and the continued belief that information can change the course of history. The work done there saved lives. It shaped nations. And it demonstrated that even in the darkest periods of history, human intelligence remains one of the most powerful tools of all. The war eventually moved beyond the need for coded messages. German armies collapsed on every front. Cities fell, communications broke down, and one by one, the radio stations that once carried encrypted orders from Berlin went silent. When the final signal stopped, the codebreakers at Bletchley Park knew their work was done. They left their huts quietly, the same way they had entered them. No medals waited for them, no ceremonies, no public recognition. Their achievements remained locked behind secrecy for decades. But the world they helped shape had changed forever. Their intelligence shortened the war. Their breakthroughs saved countless lives. Their machines became the first steps toward the computers that define our modern age. And their discipline, brilliance, and silence laid the foundation for a new era of intelligence and technology. For years, their names were unknown, their work unspoken, their contributions hidden. Only later did the world learn that inside a peaceful English estate, a group of remarkable men and women fought a silent war that altered the course of history. This has been the unknown zone, where the past reveals the secrets that shaped our world. Until next time.